Hey Pipsters. So I'm feeling really good today. I don't know, I'm feeling inspired, motivated, encouraged. Now I don't know if it's because it's a nice day outside or whatnot, but earlier today I was actually watching our church live stream. Now I was born and raised in the Seventh-day Adventist religion. You know, that's all I've known. As much as I may have, you know, kind of not really understood certain things growing up, at my age now, and I guess having my own family, I've come to appreciate some of those values and some of those morals and carry with me every day. So with Seventh-day Adventists, you go to church on Saturdays, right? Because with Ashibu normally works Saturdays, it's hard for me to actually go to church. Not so much before, but now having Little Prince, it's much more trickier. And the church that I grew up in is about, I'd say maybe about like an hour away from here, about an hour drive, which, I mean, it's not so bad, but when you work with Little Prince's schedule, and yeah, it just makes it very hard to go, just to say the least. All right, so what I've resorted to now doing is my church, they actually offer live streaming. So every Sabbath, they live stream, you know, divine service, which includes, you know, praise and worship. Most importantly, it includes the sermon. So Little Prince and I, that's pretty much how we get our little bit of dosage of church every Sabbath. So since we're not able to go, we at least still ensure that we get to live stream it. Now, with that being said, I had live streamed today's sermon, and oh my gosh, it just touched me. You know, I don't know if you know there's much churchgoers out there, but even something so simple as like a song, you know what I mean? You know, when you hear a song and you feel like, wow, this song is like speaking to me, it's speaking to my current situation in like every way, you know? That's how it was with today's sermon. So today's sermon was entitled, I Have a Dream Too. It was the pastor's way of pretty much incorporating Black History Month along with the message that he had to deliver. The pastor was Dr. Paul Smith, and oh my God, that sermon just spoke to me, like spoke to me to the degree where, you know, like just tears start to run down your face, and it's like you're not crying because something's wrong per se, but like, you know, it's like that song by Kirk Franklin, The Reason Why We Sing. You're not crying because something's necessarily wrong, but it's just you're feeling so captivated and feeling so touched by the words that you can't help but feel emotional. So that was my situation. Now, with that being said, it just brought back a slew of emotions for me. I've kind of struggled with this debate with some of my friends. Some of my friends who I guess are now kind of into, you know, they're starting to appreciate going to church and stuff like that. And some of my friends who, like me, were raised in the Seventh-day Adventist church, but now, not to say that they don't still acknowledge it or practice certain things, but they just don't really go to church like that. So for me, this is my thoughts and my feelings, okay? I went to church for nearly 18 years. 2 to 3 times a week for nearly 18 years of my life, okay? 2 to 3 times a week. Just take that in, all right? Now, I'm one of those who, like, I'll go when there's something going on, you know, I might do a spontaneous visit here and there, but I don't go as religiously like I did growing up. What kind of deterred me, I'd say, from really going to church, one thing with me is if I don't have respect for somebody or for something, I can't be around it. I don't know how to be fake like that. I don't know how to like, you know, like set aside my thoughts and my feelings and just put a smile on for the sake of putting a smile. Like, no, I can't do that. As much as I might try, it's written all over my face how I'm really feeling. So I don't even make any sort of attempts anymore. So with church now, I used to go, like I said, religiously for almost 18 years. When I was 17 going on 18, I was going through I'd say probably the most trying time in my life. It was such a difficult time for me. Pretty much from the age I was 15, things were rough. Things were rough. I mean, some people might look at it like, really, that's what you're complaining about? And then other people can definitely understand. It's one of those, you would not really be able to understand what it was that I was going through unless you were going through it with me. So like you were one of my close friends or a close relative who I opened up to or anything like that. When I was 17 particularly, a very difficult time in my life, I decided to open up to a member of the church. Okay, this was a person who I felt A, that I could confide in, B, that as a person with such, in my opinion at that time, with such a high status in the church, you would think that you can, you could really open up to without feeling judged, without feeling like, your business is going to be talked about, without feeling that, it was really going to go much further. And when I was opening up to them and how they were receiving me at the time, I felt like, damn, like this person really does have my back. They really do care, especially at that time because I was having issues with my own parents. I feel like, wow, like, this person really has my back. I could really open up to them. And, I don't know why I'm actually starting to feel a little emotional right now, and I really don't know why. So let me just take a deep breath. But nonetheless, and I know there's a lot of people who don't understand why people leave the church, especially young folks. So I would leave the church. But sometimes I feel like as elders in the church, you kind of need to take a step back and try to see, okay, maybe is there something that we're doing wrong that's making the young people feel like this is no longer their home. Nonetheless, opened up to this person, confided in them. This was the only person who I had opened up to, okay? The only person who knew what was going on, okay? Now, before long, they let me know that they shared this information with their spouse, okay? They were married. They shared this information with their spouse. And I understood that, as a married couple, you do share things with your spouse, like things that, even though, yeah, they're supposed to be in confidence and realistically you shouldn't be sharing with your spouse, sometimes you do need to talk about certain things, which I understand, maybe too, to get their perspective, to give you some advice if you're not exactly too sure as to what advice to give to me or any other person. So you just go and you share it with your spouse. So I understood that. I didn't knock that. I didn't get upset over that, nothing at all. However, what I had expected was, and what I think is a fair enough expectation is, if you are sharing this with your spouse, only do so knowing that your spouse is trustworthy and would not carry this information any further. You know what I mean? Now, with that being said, I don't know if it was the information got carried further because of that individual or because of the spouse. All I know is that that information got carried further. And you know how that goes whenever it's a case of he said, she said, broken telephone, you heard this, so you're passing it along. So by the time it reaches like that 10th or 15th or 20th or 50th or 100th person, the news or the story is completely distorted from the reality or the real facts of the story. You know what I mean? Before long, honestly, I'd have to say within a number of days, I suddenly start getting all these phone calls from different members in the church. Some who, we looked up to, because the thing with, and that's one thing I do say that I love with the Adventist church, I don't know so much now, but growing up it was really like a big family. You grew up with like sister and brother so-and-so, but they're more like a mom or a dad or a big aunt or an uncle or a close friend, someone who, it was like family. It was very much a lot like family. And I did love that. But nonetheless, getting phone calls from brother and sister so-and-so saying, oh, we're hearing this, we're hearing that. Is it true? And da-da-da and re-te-te. And now I'm taken back because it's like, wait a minute, like, how does sister and brother so-and-so know this when I only told one person? And this is one person who any person would feel like they can completely trust and confide in, and you know, like, and when you're getting the phone calls, they're phone calls, some I would say, maybe 2 out of phone calls out of how many, 2 were out of genuine love. 2 of the phone calls were out of ugh. I've never actually really talked about this before, so 2 out of the phone calls were like actual genuine love and concern, you know? Oh. Sorry, 2 of the phone calls were out of actual genuine love and concern, whereas like the remainder of those phone calls were like, you know, they just want to call to make sure that this information is true so they can go and carry it along further, or so that, you know, it's like one of those, like when they say, don't tell people your problems, because majority of them, you know, don't care, and even more of them are even glad that you're even having these issues, you know what I mean? Like, there's a very small fraction of the number of people who genuinely care, and you know, they want to see well for you. They don't want to see you going through these trying times, and they want to do things that they can do, you know, to pretty much show you their support and their love for you, right? So I don't know, I'm getting emotional. I'm not really like an emotional person, but I guess I was more affected by this than I really thought. But yeah, so I'm like actually telling this story, like I don't think some of my closest friends really even know like my reason for not really going back to the church, you know? So for me, like, it kind of made me look at my church in particularly sideways. It really did, because it showed me a lot of true colors, you know, and it made me kind of look at them like, especially because most of these people, you know, they're my elders. They're people who like I grew up respecting, and it's like, to see how now you're looking at me and you're trying to judge me is like, I'm sorry, is that the Christian thing to do? Are we not Christians? Are we not supposed to be embracing and loving and showing true and genuine love and support? Like, what would Jesus do? You know what I mean? God wouldn't sit there and condemn a person. Condemn a person based off of facts that they believe to be true. They don't even know for certain to be true. You know, God wouldn't sit there and cast judgment or throw stones or anything like that. Even after that whole situation, when I went back to church, and like, you know, there were some people who were like genuinely happy to see me, and then there were some people who were there like looking at you sideways. I don't know, I kind of feel like that really made me look at them so different. So different, you know? And that's kind of what made me deter from going back to church, because it's like, why am I going to a church? Here I am. Really, the whole purpose of going to church is, you know, so you can better your relationship with God, maintain that strong relationship with God, continue to learn more about him, and just grow, a place of growth, you know, and it should be of comfort. I felt like it wasn't. It didn't do that. I looked at it so different. Never went back to church after that. Should say never went back. It took me a good while to finally go back, but when I went back, I knew. I went back knowing like, these are the people who really wrote for me, you know, who are really down for me, and those are the people who I'm always gonna remember, I'm gonna forever respect, and I'm gonna forever love. But aside from that, why am I coming to church to put myself in that situation? Why am I coming to church to feel uncomfortable, to feel judged, to feel unwelcomed in a place where it's like, this used to be my second home, and like now I feel like a stranger in this house. I just feel like you know, like you just don't feel the love. And why am I putting myself through that? That's the thing with me too. Like if I feel uncomfortable in any way in a situation, you best believe I'm not gonna put myself through that. Why make myself miserable? For what reason? If I can get the same message from being at home as opposed to being in the church with all those people, then guess what? I'm going to stay at home and receive my message as such. Like the thing with their parents, because they're so old school, they have that old school mentality. When you try to explain this to them, they always look at it like, oh, you know, well, you're not going to church for them, you're going to church for God and for yourself. Don't pay them no mind, just come to church anyways, and da 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 da. But they don't get it. It's not even, you're not going for them, you know that much, but you can't help but feel distracted when you go and all this stuff is going on around you, or even in your head, that you're like, you can't focus. So why put myself through that? Why even expose my child to that judgment? And like the even more crazy thing about all of that now, not only the fact that the ones who are casting the most judgment and throwing the most stones are the ones with the most broken homes, and should be really concerned about their own home and their own situation or their own children or their own relationships. They're the ones who are trying to judge you. And I guess now in hindsight, it's like, it's a good distraction for them. It's always better when you can be concerned what everybody else is doing wrong. You don't got to focus about what's really going on in your own home. You know, it's easier to do that, right? That is the main reason why I do not go back to my current church. And maybe it's very ignorant of me, but because of that whole experience, it caused me to classify all Adventist churches in that category, which is very unfair to do, for sure. But in my defense, it was hard for me to really and truly understand. There we go. Yeah, sorry. In my defense, it was really and truly hard for me to really be able to understand how, if I was raised in a church and for nearly 18 years, and this was pretty much my family, and they were able to do me like this, who's to say another church who I have no sort of connections or foundations with, who's to say that they won't do me, if not any worse? You know what I mean? Not to say that I don't appreciate the Adventist church. Without question, I do. Like I said, that's all I've known. That's where all my values, my foundations, everything was based out of. And this is the other thing too. I know with my parents, especially, they think, oh, you know, you're not going to church. You don't have a relationship with God. You know, you're going to go to hell. They think the worst. But they don't understand that, hey, yeah, guess what? I don't go to church. But guess what? Every morning and night, I say my morning and my nighttime prayers. I make sure Little Princess's morning and nighttime prayers. Every time before we eat, we ensure we bless our food. Little Prince knows every time before he eats, he blesses his food. Even if it's just a bottle he's drinking, if it's a cup of juice he's drinking, he blesses it every single time before he puts it to his mouth. Every time before we leave the house, we say a prayer. Every time when we're about to drive from anywhere, we say a prayer. We're constantly praying. Every morning when I get up and I'm getting ready for the day, I play gospel music. I have on YouTube, I know you can form, you know, playlists with songs and whatnot. And oddly enough, out of all the playlists that I have, my gospel playlist is the ones with the most songs, okay? I kid you not, my gospel playlist is the ones with the most songs. And I listen to that every single day. I have to listen to some gospel music because that's where I feel most motivated. I feel most encouraged, especially when, not only when I'm going through trying times, but even when times are good. I'm always listening to my gospel music. I'm always thanking God for my blessing. I don't take anything for granted. I without question feel that I am blessed. I don't call it luck at all. I know for sure it's blessing. So yeah, I might not go to church, but it doesn't mean that I forgot what the church has instilled in me. And it doesn't mean that I don't want to pass on those same things now to Little Prince, or any offspring of mine. And also with Ushibu, even with him too, I get at him sometimes, like when he's driving with Little Prince, I'd be like, yo, did you make sure you said you asked God for traveling mercies before you took off with him? Or like if he's feeding him, did you make sure you said his grace before you fed it? So it's very important to me. It's very important to my family. Also with us, you know, like he's not Adventist. He was I guess raised Christian, but he never really went to church. It was never really instilled in him as strongly as it was instilled in us. But still, nonetheless, like in our family, that's just what it is. Like when you come into our house, the first thing you're gonna see when you walk into our house is a Bible open, okay? An open Bible to the Psalms. We definitely think that that's important, despite my sometimes potty mouth, you know. Despite my sometimes potty mouth, I definitely feel that God is a huge part of my life, and I try to instill that. But just listening to the sermon, it just really took me back, and it just really made me explore the reasons as to why I stopped going to church. But it's so crazy because as hard as they were on us back then, and now I can understand, okay? Now I can really and truly understand. Because I never used to get it when my older siblings used to tell me, yeah, you guys have it good when we were going to church, okay? They used to think that we had it so well. And for us, we looked at it like, what? Like, they were strict on us, strict, okay? You could not go to church with makeup. You could not go to church with Q-Tex, okay? Q-Tex, you know what Q-Tex is nail polish. You could not go with no nail polish. You could not go with no jewelry, no tattoo, no certain weave in your hair. You could not go. You could not go to church wearing pants. You certainly could not go to church wearing jeans, okay? You could not go in and run. No, as much as God says, yes, come as you are, I'm sorry, but the church that I went to, it was nothing like that, because when people came as they were, they used to judge them. Yes, there is, I shouldn't say all of them, because not all, but majority of them would judge them. Adventists, we have this program called AY, which is Adventist Youth. It usually starts so how your typical day would start on a Saturday. You go to Sabbath school for 9:15. You have the divine service at 11. The sermon, everything. Back then, church used to finish 2-3 o'clock. You go for lunch. Usually, you go by somebody's house for lunch, or sometimes, depending what the day was at church for the day, the church might provide lunch in the basement. But usually when you went to somebody's house or you went to your house for lunch, you would take a nap, because, you know, you get a little bit of itis. You take a nap, and then you come back in time for AY, which is usually starts about an hour before sunset. Now, when we had to come to church, without question, you had to wear a skirt or a dress. And by the way, it had to be a certain length, okay? It could not fit you a certain way, neither, okay? So you had to have a certain wardrobe, right? Now, when it was time to go back for AY, you were allowed to bring a change of clothes, but you're only allowed to put it on after AY. So usually, you know, we'd walk with like our jeans or running. Normally it's like your hottest fashion, you know, because that's when you're allowed to put it on. So after AY, you go, you change your clothes, and depending, usually they would have social. So social is like, it's like different activities. It's like a fun and games, pretty much. They do different songs from like back home, different games from back home, and it just included everybody from the church, the young, the old. Everybody was involved, you know. They would also sell food, so they sell some fries, some patty, burger, of course vegetarian burger, pop, the grace drinks, like all of that stuff they would sell, you know. So you would look forward to that, like especially as young people, we loved that. We looked forward to when we could go back to church and it was AY, or not so much AY, but more for the social. But now when you see what the kids can wear to church, now yo, I trip out, because I'm like, these are not the same parents that we used to have to deal with. It's definitely a new generation, that's without question, because these kids get away with everything. I'm seeing people up there on the choir loft now, having jewelry, having tattoo, their makeup done, everything looking nice. Now you see people just go to church wearing mini skirt, all sorts of stuff, and it's like, yo, we never could have got away with that, never. And now but I guess it just speaks to how times have changed. But regardless, I guess it kind of opened up a little bit more of me to you guys. But I also wanted to get your thoughts and your feedback. How do you guys feel? Do you feel that, well, A, if it doesn't necessarily have to be in the Adventist church, but any church, have you found that times have changed? Certain things that were important back then might not necessarily be as important now. Do you feel that it is important to go to church every single week? Or do you think that, hey, as long as your relationship with God is strong enough, it doesn't really matter whether or not you go to church? Or, you know, do you think that as long as you're live streaming from home, it's good? Do you think that, you know, like anything? Give me your thoughts and your feelings. I know it's a very touchy subject. I know one of the things that people always say not to discuss is politics and religion, but this is just something that was on my mind, and I just wanted to share with you guys and wanted to get your thoughts and your feedbacks in regard to it. So yeah, just let me know. And I'm going to go and get Little Prince. All right.